Hello and welcome back to another video, guys. This is a chest workout. Later on in the video I'm going to talk about progressive overload, DUP, and I have a little steroids rant as well. So this is a cuffed incline cable fly. There's a good place for contraction and stretch on this exercise. Not really a very widely done exercise, but one which I very much enjoy, and I think a lot of people would benefit from putting it in their training program. Next after that is dumbbell shoulder press. So those incline cuffed flies are more of a pre-activation. So the dumbbell shoulder press, obviously a pretty standard exercise for the majority of people. I like to go a little bit heavier on these and go for like 8 to 10 reps. Good pause at the bottom and then a nice press to the top. With this exercise I like to come down to about my ears and then press from there. Some people like to touch their shoulders. My mobility in my shoulders doesn't really allow for that, but my mobility in general is pretty good, so there's nothing I really need to do on that one. Next is an incline chest press or hammer incline press. Good contraction at the bottom, stretch at the bottom, contraction at the top, and you want to keep your elbows under your wrists the whole time, so you're pressing through your elbows. If you don't, you're going to probably damage your shoulders and your wrists, and you're not really going to get as good a contraction on your chest as possible. If you do this, then you'll also get a much better upper chest activation as well. Lateral raises next. A nice, good level top, level position at the top, and then obviously there's the position at the bottom. I like to come to my legs. Some people like to bring the dumbbells in front of them, but I like to bring them to my legs where they're parallel. I just find it's a lot more of a comfortable position, and also I get a better contraction and stretch from holding them there at the bottom just briefly. It's like resetting. It's a bit like a dead stop exercise, but unless I get down to like the lower weights, then I generally tend to just keep going. So after that is a rear delt cable fly. This exercise, a bit like the pec deck, you do not want to come too far back, and obviously a good stretch at the bottom. If you come too far back, you're going to be putting a lot of strain on your rotator cuffs, and it's just not a good place to be in. So keep your elbows bent and do not like straighten out and lock your arms. That's not a good place. So I like to come a little bit further forward in the stretch part of the movement, which allows for a bit better of a stretch, looking like a thug there. Next is the occlusion work, which I love using these bands. They are bear grips, occlusion straps, and doing any kind of occlusion work is a fantastic pump, but it's also very good for progressive overload. So you get a good contraction and you're very able to increase the metabolic stress in which you cause in the muscle. So you bring up the reps nice and high, like 15 to 20, with 20 seconds rest between each set, and like 5 to 6 sets with a 20-second rest in between, which is what I'm doing here. The advantage of doing occlusion work is you don't have to go super heavy. You can use lighter weights, but you create a bigger stress response in the muscle because of the amount of blood that's getting pushed in there. So the idea is to let less blood out of the muscle than you are letting in, which is going to create that amount of pump, which is unruly. It should be a little bit illegal, but it is a crazy pump. And literally your triceps, or if you do it for biceps, they feel literally rock hard after this. So yeah, I recommend it to anybody that enjoys getting a ridiculous pump, which, let's be honest, who doesn't enjoy getting a good pump? Next is front raises. Now, barbell front raises, I like to keep my arms bent the whole time. If you're locking out your arms, you're probably not doing the exercise correctly, and that's going to put a lot of stress on the tendon which goes over your elbow joint. So a little bit of bend throughout, and a good tip is to contract your chest a little bit at the top. So you contract your chest as you're raising it up, so your front delts and chest get a little bit of action in both in one exercise. So next, you can either do this on a pec deck or a cable, but I prefer cable because you can get a better stretch, you get a better range of movement on the stretch, and you can bring your hands closer together on the contraction. So those are the two things you want to focus on when you're doing it on a pec deck, of course. But because you've got two handles instead of the two like column things which most of the pec decks have, you can bring your hands close together and it's a little bit of a nicer contraction. So this is how we're currently looking. Pretty happy with how my weight and look is at the moment. Very much looking forward to stage in 2020, and I think I'm going to bring a very different package to what I have brought before. So let's roll on 2020, boys. So guys, hello and welcome to another video. I hope you're having a lovely day today. And this video is going to be talking about progression schemes, how you can maximize the amount of progression you're going to be making in the gym, and what DUP is as well. So everything that I do, I log in on my phone, which automatically updates onto my computer because I use a Google Sheets app, exactly the same as I use with all my clients. I use it myself. And it's one of the easiest ways to be able to keep everything in one place but use it from multiple devices. So I'm going to go through, hopefully you'll see it on this side, what my program looks like, what everything, all the changes that go through each week, why, and how it maximizes progress. So I'm just going to zoom in on the screen now, and as you can see from my program, each week reps change. Now the reason for that is DUP stands for daily undulating period scheme. So it's a daily undulating period rep scheme. And the reason for that is it's one of the easiest ways for myself and feedback from my clients to make progress, and good progress, consistent progress. So if, for example, you're able to get the dumbbells up and do 3 sets of 10 on let's say 30 kilos. If you did 3 sets of 10 one week, the next week you went up and tried a little bit heavier weight, went up to 32, and you did 3 sets of 10, that's still progress because the weight is going up. However, if you get to a sticking point on weight and perhaps your strength has gone down or your strength isn't increasing, you can change that by doing, for example, if we look at the purple rep scheme, if we were doing 3 sets of 12 for that 30 kilo dumbbell, then the next week we did 3 sets of 13, we were struggling a little bit. We weren't able to get the full amounts of sets, or maybe the form was breaking down a little bit. So then we take the reps down to 12 reps. However, we take the sets up. Now that increases the total volume load. So if we were to look at each exercise as the total load moved for that workout, you would be able to see the total volume load going up. It sounds complicated when I say it, but really it's just moving more weight each week. And the way in which we've been able to look at studies and things, it makes it look very complicated. However, even in Roman times, this was quite common. They have an old, I think it was a mythology thing or a story of a guy that used to carry a calf up a mountain. As the calf got bigger, he obviously got stronger because he was still carrying the calf up the mountain. Eventually it came into a cow, and he was stronger because the weight of the calf was getting heavier and heavier. So that's progressive overload. So if you look at the rep schemes, you'll see that they change. And then if you go across, you'll see the different exercises. Now, the rep schemes have different sections. So green is going to be more focused on a strength focus, because we're working with lower sets and reps, but we're working with the same sort of intensity. Now you can see a number at the end, the at says at 8.5 on the green. Now this may sound a little bit more complicated as well, but it's also a very good system to use. So bear with me and try and take this information in. So the at sign is a RPE scale. Now if we go down to the bottom here, we've got an RPE scale, a key. So at 8.5 will be 2 reps left in the tank. Now for beginners, I normally say don't worry too much about the number at the end, because a lot of people it's hard to gauge where that 2 more reps is. But basically, I would say just try and do the sets and then progress each week. So don't worry too much about the number at the end. If you're a beginner, don't worry about it at all. If you're intermediate, maybe keep an eye on it and start changing the reps up each week and look at the RPE, see how it feels after you've pressed. Do you reckon you could have got 2 more? Okay, that's an 8.5. Do you reckon you could have got 1 more? Okay, that's a 9. If you couldn't do anything, you couldn't even move, you were struggling to get the last rep, that's a 10, that's failure, okay? That's the last one. And then if someone was assisting you and you got reps past failure, that'd be 11. Like, it's not a complete rep scheme, so it can go over 11. Then I also use things like forced negatives as well, which would be past 11. And yeah, like drop sets and things like that get a little bit complicated, but I can go into that in another video. So the exercises are recorded in the middle, and then as we go across each week, we can see the increase or the decrease in weight or increase in total volume. So if we go for, now this is where things can be a little bit more tricky as well, but the beginning exercise for the majority of my workouts I use as a pre-activation exercise. Now, a pre-activation exercise, I'm not really looking to progressively overload as much as I am with my other movements, like the isolations and compounds. Pre-activation is purely to make sure that I'm contracting that muscle. So for example, if I'm doing chest and I do like some cable flies or something to just get my chest warmed up, get a lot of blood in there, get some activation going, then that will benefit me, and I'm not really looking for that to progress massively. So as you can see, if we look at the first exercise and we go to low to high cable flies, first week was 7.5, and the reps haven't changed massively. So they've stayed fairly similar. There's maybe 1 or 2 reps added each week, but nothing massive, and the weight hasn't really changed, but I'm fine with that. So then if we go on to flat bench press, dumbbell bench press, first week was 40 with some sets of 45. Next week was 45 with some sets of 40, and then this then the next week was 45 with 1 set of 40, and then this week was 45 with 3 sets of 40. But the volume is going up and the total increase is going up. I didn't actually record, I did a back off set of 40 for, put it in now, for 9 as well. But as you can see, each week we've got progress, and that is what builds muscle. That is what the progressive overload thing is. People complicate it and they say you have to do this, you have to do that, but it's literally just increasing the amount that you lift each week. You could do it with bodyweight exercises. You can get pretty jacked just with bodyweight exercises from simply doing progressive overload on that. 1 week you're doing press ups, you do 3 sets of 12 every day or twice a day, or twice a week, and then the next week you do 3 sets of 14. It's progressive overload. That's what I did when I was a kid, you know. Then as we go down, we have different kinds of exercises in here as well. So this exercise here is in green, which is actually occlusion work, which is more looking for metabolic stress, so reps are very high with that. Then like purple is like I would say purple and green are kind of like the standard progress schemes. Majority of people say, okay, do 3 sets of 8 to 10, or do 3 sets of 12 to 15, you know. That's kind of like standard what people give out. But this is like, if you take one thing from this video, it's tracking your workouts. Even if you're writing it down in a book, you don't have to put it on a phone, you don't have to put it in Google Sheets, you don't have to use my coaching system, you don't have to do that. But there's so many apps out there that you can track your progress in. And I've finished the recording, but there's so many apps that you can use to record your training, to record your workouts, to record your progress over time. So take full advantage of those. Write it down in a book if you prefer it in a book. Sometimes, like before I used that, I was writing everything in a book. And the handy thing with this is you don't have to keep flicking back the pages and trying to bookmark where you've come from and how much you've progressed and stuff like that. So one thing to take from this video is to log your training and to use progressive overload. So even if it's 0.5 of a kilo that you've added, or one more rep that you've added, that is still progress. And that is what builds muscle. That is the simple way of building muscle, which people complicate so much. And there's a slight rant coming on, which I had with somebody through Instagram this morning, which he was like, I'm thinking about taking anabolic steroids, I'm thinking about doing this and that. I was like, okay, well, you know, that's your choice. How old are you? 19. Right, not a good start, but never mind. How long have you been training for? 3 years. Very not a good start. Okay, so you're 19, you've been training for 3 years, you're nowhere near your maximal potential, your hormones haven't even finished being high, your testosterone's in a brilliant place as anyway. What about your food? What do you do tracking your food? I don't track my food. Okay. What about your training? How's your training going? Have you tracked your training? Oh, I don't track my training. Right. Well, if you're not tracking your training, if you're not tracking your food, and you're thinking about going on anabolic steroids, why would you even think about doing that? You know, what's going to be in your mind about tracking your bloods, about tracking the intake of your anabolics and what you need to take to counteract the negative side effects that you can get from them? How often are you going to check your blood glucose? How often are you going to check your bloods coming back from, like, it's a madness. It really is, and it does frustrate me a lot. So anyway, if he is watching this video, don't be stupid. Train for at least 10 years or 8 to 10 years. Get closer to your natural potential. It's going to be very difficult to get to your natural potential anyway, but get closer towards it. Track your workouts, track your food, and don't be a knob.